Is it showing up?
Yep.
Okay, Madam Mayor, we are ready.
Whatever you want.
You're on mute, Madam Mayor.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, councillors and staff that are joining us, also members of the public, either this evening with the live streaming or possibly tomorrow or the next day. I would like to call this special council meeting of June 15th, 2020 to order. My name is Sandra Easton, the Mayor of the Town of Lincoln and Chair of today's special council meeting. We're meeting electronically through Zoom, and this is our fourth meeting during this declared emergency period. Members of the public may observe the proceedings by accessing the live webcast at our YouTube channel. As the federal and provincial governments continually provide updates related to the COVID-19 pandemic situation, I want to remind residents that our website is always up to date with current information, and I encourage you to visit lincoln.ca. We still remind everyone to continue to practice social distancing and keep 2 meters apart with those you do not live with and to be safe. The Shononton people have called these lands home for thousands of years, and more recently, the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee have been sharing the land as one dish, one spoon treaty territory. We would like to acknowledge the enduring resilience of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who call this territory home. Madam Clerk, would you please complete the roll call of council?
Please take your microphones off mute, and when I call your name, please say here. Mayor Easton?
Here.
Councillor Regima? Councillor Regima?
Here.
Councillor Brunet?
Here.
Councillor Pachariva?
Here.
Councillor Macpherson?
Here.
Councillor Miklick?
Here.
Councillor Timmers?
Here.
Councillor Reimer?
Here.
And we have quorum, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. In addition, I want to take a moment to welcome the staff we have joining us today electronically. Madam Clerk, I'm not seeing everyone, so if there is anyone else added to the list, I'll leave it to you to announce those. Chief Administrative Officer Mike Kirkopoulos, Finance Treasurer Terry Trewalla, Director of Planning and Development Kathleen Dale, Director of Community Services Shannon Mackay, Fire Chief Greg Hudson, Economic Development Officer Paul Diani, Director of Public Works Dave Graham. Moderating and clerking the meeting today, we have our Town Clerk Julie Kirklos. And we also have in attendance our IT staff, Matt Guadalono and Devin Linton, who is assisting in today's meeting. As this is a virtual meeting, I will ask that we follow some procedures during this electronic meeting. Should there be a connection or service disruption for the chair, or if quorum is lost, the chair and or clerk will call a 10-minute recess to reconnect and to regain quorum. If quorum is lost, the meeting will be adjourned. If connection is lost from the chair, Deputy Mayor or the Vice Chair will resume the meeting. And once reconnection is achieved, the chair will assume their role. Each member of council who wishes to speak, press the raise hand feature on your video call, and the clerk will track our speakers and then invite you to speak, and I will open up for comments or questions. When I finish reading a motion and announcing the mover and seconder, the clerk will then call out the vote by reading each member of council's name out loud. Please remember to take yourselves off mute during this portion of the meeting so that you can confirm if you are yay or nay. And when not speaking, please remember to put yourselves on mute. Do any members have any amendments to the order of the agenda? There being none, are there any declarations of interest? Are there any announcements by members? And I will remind that you have 3 items. Do any members have any announcements?
Madam Mayor, we have Councillor Brunet, followed by Councillor Regima.
Very good, Madam Clerk. Councillor Brunet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I just wanted to make a couple of short announcements. On May the 28th, Councillor Macpherson and I participated in the Penn West Power Inc. board meeting, which was done via teleconference due to the COVID-19 ban on in-person meetings. KPMG presented the draft financial statements for 2019, and subsequently we passed a resolution to approve those financials so that they could be passed on and sent to the financial departments of the 3 municipalities of the shareholders. In addition, at the meeting, Council will recall that we had considerable discussion on the appointment of the NPI directors in the fall of 2019. Mayor Easton subsequently sent a letter to the Penn West Hydro Board, which we discussed at that meeting in December of 2019. So subsequently, there was a lot of discussion at that meeting, and there was all kinds of controversy, let's say, with regards to the rotation of the 4th director on the position of the NPI board. So at the December 17th board meeting, it resulted in a passing of a resolution to confirm the existing rotation procedure. However, I think if you asked all board members, there was still a hope that we could do better. So I'm happy to report that that at this meeting on May the 28th, we have added to the Penn West policy manual an addendum. It will read addendum policy number 4, which deals with meeting procedures and appointments to the Peninsula West Board. Therefore, this will be a written record of the procedure so that future boards will not have to go through the same dilemma that we've had to deal with for the last 8 or 9 months. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brunet. Madam Clerk, because of the nature of this circumstance, I'd like to allow questions, although we wouldn't normally do that. Otherwise, do you have advice for another place that we could bring those questions up in the event that there are any?
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you. I have provided a placeholder for that near the end of the agenda, so absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
All right, we'll move on now to Councillor Regima.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As an update from the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce, you all would have received a reminder from Andrea regarding the Outstanding Business Achievement Awards being held June 24th at 7 p.m. virtually. If you haven't registered, please do. This is a free event. This council always enthusiastically supports business and always supports this event. And while it's definitely going to be quite different this year, it will be equally important, and your attendance and support will, of course, be equally appreciated, if not more so. Also, a bit of an update regarding the Mayor's Golf Tournament. Nothing is finalized, but at this point, there are ongoing discussions about how to partner with others and have a bit of a blended tournament in the fall. I will update you when final decisions are made. And an update, Madam Mayor, from the Town of Lincoln Housing Task Force. I did update council, I believe it was 2 or 3 months ago, about the work that the task force has been undertaking. I shared with council that the task force has reached out to and has had guests at our meetings. quite a number of service organizations, housing providers, and others that have working knowledge and expertise in the area of housing and housing supports. The goal of the task force has really been to learn as much as we can about not only housing needs within Lincoln and across Niagara, and certainly West Niagara, but also to find out what initiatives and supports are in place and currently being provided by others so that we don't duplicate efforts. We also asked questions about the needs in Lincoln and of course in West Niagara and indeed Niagara as a whole. We also recognized at our last meeting, which was our first meeting since the pandemic began, that the pandemic has not only changed the needs and will continue to change the needs and the kinds of needs that we recognized before the pandemic, but it has and will continue to exacerbate existing needs. The members of the task force, being myself as chair, Councillor Timmers as vice chair, Councillor Brunet and Councillor Mikulik, have been fortunate to have not only the ongoing support and participation of Mayor Easton, but also the enthusiastic and skilled support of a number of staff members, including Director of Community Services Shannon McKay, Deputy Director of Planning and Economic Development Matt Bruder, Director of Planning Kathleen Dale has also attended and assisted, and the ongoing support and guidance of CAO Mike Kirkopoulos. And most recently, Planner Josh Workington has joined us and has shared his expertise. Josh has a professional background in housing, working in the private sector, representing both developers as well as working for nonprofit housing providers and consultants. Next step, staff will be bringing a report to you that sums up the work of the task force thus far, and will make recommendations as to appropriate steps that we can make as a lower tier municipality, and also working together and collaborating with others as we continue to build relationships. I'm hoping we'll see this report in July. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rinjima, and also for your efforts chairing this task force. And I'm hoping, members of council, that one of the recommendations is for us to remove from the situation of task force to a subcommittee of one of our statutory committees. And we can certainly look forward to the recommendation from staff on how that's going to be handled, because without doing that, we're not going to be able to make formal recommendations to council. Thank you very much. We'll move on now to item 7.1, special council minutes of May 25th, 2020.
Madam Mayor, we still have some speakers scheduled. They popped up after. Yep. So we have a few actually in the queue. So we have next up Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, the announcement I have is one that's of a bit of a personal announcement. It's something, my parents, they were born in Slovenia, small little country that used to be part of Yugoslavia. And on June the 25th, they'll be celebrating their National Day. It's similar to our Canada Day or America's 4th of July. But, you know, I just wanted to take the time, if you see any of your Slovenian friends in the neighborhood on June 25th, be sure to wish them a happy National Day. I know that we have our neighbors there at the Bled Multicultural Center. There is a Slovenian presence within the community, as well as another Slovenian center, Lipa Park in Rockway. So I just wanted to take the time and acknowledge it's a beautiful country. My parents are from, proud to be a Slovenian. So that's my announcement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I do remember when I was growing up, the Slovenian presence in Beamsville was very significant. And I think that is a very good reminder, and we can certainly send good wishes out on that day through a variety of means. Madam Clerk?
Yep, next up we have Councillor Macpherson.
Go ahead, Councillor Macpherson.
You're on mute, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of quick announcements, bringing everybody up to speed on a couple of the economic development initiatives. From a face shield standpoint, we have now delivered close to 1,000 face shields to over 85 businesses in the community. The businesses range from retail, hospitality to professional services, agriculture, and manufacturing facilities. Overwhelmingly, the response has been positive on the initiative, with many businesses appreciative of the town in assisting businesses with reopening and health and safety of both customers and employees. And as far as the Shop Lincoln website update, close to 12,000 unique visits to the website since we launched on May 5th. Over 200 listings on the website. And while the majority of the visitors have come primarily from Lincoln and Niagara, we've had visitors from as far away as Beijing, Vancouver, Southern US, and Mexico. The top categories being used when visiting the website are curbside pickup, no surprise, restaurants, online shopping, and farmers market. And the roadside stands. While the website was our response to COVID to help support our businesses, we intend on keeping the website post-COVID to help market our businesses and our community to both locals and visitors. Businesses have been very appreciative of the support from the town on this initiative. And I'd also just like to bring everybody up to date on the BIA's reopen response kits. I think we've all seen them in the BIA newsletter with various posters and stickers and face shields and pretty much anything that a business would need to reopen under the COVID conditions. Pleased to let everybody know that we've delivered 32 kits to date. And there are 5 that are ready to go. So a very good uptake on those as well. And just finally, very pleased and proud to have been a participant at the Mayor's State of the Town address back on May 27th, bringing the virtual group up to date on many of these economic development initiatives. So that's it for me. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And you should be very proud. You have always good news to give, which is always a nice position to be in. And because there's so much forward thinking that's been going on in the economic area, it certainly is the focus, I think, of everyone at the moment. All right, Madam Clerk.
Next up, we have Councillor Pachariva.
Councillor Pachariva, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Your Worship. And I just wanted to also mention and thank you again for including myself and Councillor Macpherson in your mayor's address at the Chamber's virtual luncheon for you. It was, I brought forward some information based around communication and what we're doing and how we're still wading through the pandemic, but our housing starts and things are there, and together we'll all get through this. Had the opportunity to sit in on an excess soil management webinar. Now, I was always under the impression that underground infrastructure wasn't sexy, but the speakers at this seminar said, who would have thought dirt was now sexy? So this all comes into to play with the new policy, PPS 2020 3.2.3, which came into effect May 1st. Planning authorities should support where feasible on-site and local reuse of excess soil through planning and development approvals while protecting human health and the environment. So we need to look upon this as a resource and a chance to maybe make some money rather than, the scourge that it used to be with improper dumping. So, look forward to this coming forward and being part of it. Also wanted to mention too, because, following up on Councillor Mikulek's shout out to the Slovenian community, Dziękuję. There was also, we don't want to leave anyone out. We had Portuguese and Italian month and Independence Days, along with Ukrainian Independence Day. So I just want to be inclusive, and you'll see that later on in one of my notices of motions. So thank you.
Very good, Deputy Mayor. And who is next, Madam Clerk?
We have Councillor Timmers. Councillor Brunet already went, so we'll go with Councillor Timmers and then we'll end with Councillor Brunet if that's okay.
All right, Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Mary Easton. I think I missed a little bit. I got booted off just at the beginning of the meeting and I had a hard time connecting, but I'm back. So I just wanted to mention that June is also Seniors Month. And last Friday on June 12th, thank you to Lori Laird for organizing it. Our chair from the Age Friendly Committee and myself, we raised the Age Friendly Niagara flag, celebrating Seniors Month in June. So I was very happy, and thank you to Lori for doing that. I was also at Albright when we delivered the face shields, and they're very appreciative, and they're working really hard at getting things set up so that families can finally come in and have some contact with their members, their family, loved ones. We're all excited and waiting in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully that will happen, with one family member being able to come in physically distance outside perhaps, so it's safe. So we're all waiting for that. And thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brunet. Hello, Councillor Brunet.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I had held back, hoping that either Councillor Macpherson or Councillor Timmers would speak about the Albright Manor masks. And so that was, I just wanted to, as a board member at Albright Manor, I just wanted to thank Paul Deaney. We were over there delivering 150 masks, and I can tell you as a board member and getting a newsletter and a bulletin from the executive director every week and the CAO, they've experienced many issues, and those masks, those shields are going to go a long way. They explained to us that, you know, the seniors not being able to see their caregiver's face with goggles and a mask on was very problematic. And those face shields are going to open the door for those caregivers and those support workers at Albright Manor. So I just wanted to make sure we discussed that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. We still have Councillor Pachariva.
Councillor.
Yes, sorry, Your Worship. I forgot. Oh, and I've turned my video off as I unmuted myself. There we go. I'll get this. Just one last thing too, and I want to wish our LGBTQ2 community a happy Pride Month. Things are going to be different this year, but because of COVID-19, but a lot of the celebrations are going to be virtual. So didn't want to leave anyone out. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Councillor. All right, members of council, we move on then to item 7.1, which is the special council minutes of May 25th, 2020. Members of council have any questions or comments? There being none, I have a motion. Oh, I see Councillor Njima. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right, Councillor Njima.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I got my hand up the last minute.
So it's okay. Go ahead.
At the special council meeting on May 25th, Councillor Pachariva brought forward a notice of motion suggesting that this council consider advocating for the establishment of a universal basic income. I think that while this is not a decision that would be made at the local level, it's an important discussion for us to have in terms of what investment need to be made provincially, federally, even internationally to help us as we move through this pandemic and out of this pandemic. As far as the Universal Basic Income Initiative, I do recall when this was being discussed recently, and my recollection is that the impetus to establish a universal basic income was partly to offset the job losses that we were seeing as technology comes into play. It's no secret that jobs have been lost to technology and automation. What we don't know at this point is the extent to which jobs will be lost permanently as a result of measures put in place to deal with COVID-19. We don't know what changes will need to be made. We don't know what measures will have to continue to be put into place to support those that have lost their jobs. But we also don't know what kind of investments can and should be made to ensure on a Canada-wide level that employers, and particularly the manufacturer of goods, are able to remain competitive.
So, Councillor, are
Yes.
you objecting to the fact that this is in the minutes? Are you, because it sounds like you have a very well-researched position that I think we would want to hear when this debate comes up. I don't want to interrupt you, but do you have any changes that you want made to this piece as it stands in the minutes?
It was leading to a question, and I only have a little bit more to say, and then I'll make my question,
All
if you
right.
don't mind, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
So we don't know what decisions are going to be made on a Canada-wide level to ensure that manufacturer of goods are able to remain competitive, and through the ability to remain competitive, able to continue to employ and pay people a decent wage. All questions that have been grappled with over the ages, but now it seems with all of these changes that have been thrust upon us, we are going to need innovative and long-term thinking more than we possibly ever have in our lifetimes. All this to say that I'm glad Councillor Pachariva brought this notice of motion, because again, while the decision to establish a universal basic income or not is not a decision that would be made by us at a local level, it's certainly something that we need to understand, particularly if we are to advocate it for it. So I'm wondering, so I don't see the motion in today's agenda. So I'm wondering when we will see that motion and have that discussion.
Okay, thank you
Thank you,
very
Madam
much.
Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Madam Clerk, do you have any additional information on this?
Right, so in the minutes, it did say that we would be making it come forward for a June meeting consideration. And in speaking with Councillor Pachariva, we're still working on some of that wording to bring it forward to the June 29th special council meeting. But I know that Councillor Pachariva has his hand up, and I can bet he wants to speak to that. So,
well, all I want to talk about is the date.
yeah, it will be brought forward on June 29th.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I do have one more question about the minutes, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My other question is, in there was a report brought forward talking about the quarterly capital projects. And my
What page
question
is
is,
that on? Can you
I'm
just
sorry, I
direct
don't
us to
have
where
it.
it is?
I don't have it open.
All right, Madam
It's-
Clerk, can you direct us to where we would find that?
One moment. I believe that is on page 6 of the agenda in the minutes itself.
And this is under the motion to receive and file council information package. Are we
No.
talking about capital project costs?
No, I think
that's the
what
Western
Councillor
Hill.
Rajima is speaking to is the Public Works quarterly project update.
Oh,
And
I see. Yes, it's at, all right, it's at the bottom of the page. Go ahead, Councillor.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. I was contacted by a resident who has questions related to the ongoing construction in the area. His concerns are related to the timing of the construction and the fact that phase 1 is happening now and phase 2 will be happening at a later date. I'm not sure what his concerns are, and I wanted to ask through you, Madam Mayor, to the Director of Public Works, if he can describe what we anticipate the effects being on the residents in the area, and the effects of phase 2 coming up, and what the timing is for phase 2 coming up.
All right, so what project specifically are you talking about, Councillor Rajima? Where is it located in town?
Silver Birch Lane.
Okay, all right. Ms. Dale, can you help us?
The question was, I believe, more appropriately directed to the Director of Public Works.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about a planning matter. I'm very sorry. Mr. Graham, please.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. So we're currently almost complete with the Frisian neighborhood water main replacement project, and that's referred to as phase 1. So that project is almost completed. We're in the restoration phase right now. So we're going to be doing sodding, repairing people's driveways where we've had to dig up water services, and restoring the road where it was dug up for the water main replacement. So that is almost complete. And in the phase 2 portion, which is proposed for 2021 next year, would entail further water main replacement in that area, which would be Cedarbrook Lane and Green Meadow Boulevard. So that's what's planned for phase 2 in 2021. And then as part of that phase 2 project, our plan would be to resurface the roads in phase 1 that was received water main replacement this year.
All right. Councillor Njima, does that address, do you think, your constituents' concern?
Yeah, I think now that I've heard Director Graham speak, I think that his concern was probably related to the fact that he has to wait for the road to be refinished until phase 2. So that answers my question. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank
All
you,
right.
Mr. Graham.
Okay. I don't want to discourage people from asking questions, but it's not possible to be as intuitive when you're all sitting in the same room. And so it's hard to kind of read where I think you're going. So I don't need to be behaving as though I'm putting barriers in your way. All right. Are there any other comments, any questions or comments about these minutes? All right, I will move on then. I have a motion moved by Councillor Njima and seconded by Councillor Reimer. Approve the minutes of the following meetings of council, special council minutes of May 25th, 2020. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. If you can remove your microphones off mute, and I'll call your name, and it will be yay or nay. Beginning with Councillor Brunet.
Yay.
Councillor Macpherson.
Yay.
Councillor Miklick. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I tried hitting the space bar and it didn't work. Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Pachariva.
Yay.
Councillor Reimer.
Yay.
Councillor Regima.
Yay.
Councillor Timmers.
Yay.
Councillor Russell marked absent, and Mayor Easton.
Yay.
Thank you. That carries.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. As a result of town hall closures and social distancing guidelines being in place, any in-person public attendance at special council meetings is not currently available. I say this, ladies and gentlemen who are watching, for clarification, and we have no registered delegations for tonight. This is something that we're preparing to accommodate in the future. Moving to item number 9, we'll consider item 9.1, which is the report AD 04-2020 COVID-19 impact updates. And Mr. Kirkopoulos, CAO Kirkopoulos, will address this report. Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening to members of council. You'll see that this report follows a similar format to the monthly reports that staff have been bringing forward to council. So I will take you through some of the highlights and then definitely look to members of the senior leadership team to provide comments on various sections. Kind of fast forwarding through the first couple of pages, which does provide a little bit of a background. 4 members of council that looks at both the financial impacts and some of the operational impacts. And we can get into some of those both in the question and answer and later on in the report. But we go through a little bit of our internal response and the fact that we continue to meet on a weekly basis. A number of our staff are meeting with their respective organizations. There's a number of teams that have been set up across the region, and those continue to happen. We're still experiencing, as Mary Easton highlighted, facility closures and program cancellations, although everyone will recall earlier today there was an announcement that we are headed into stage 2, which really starts to look at the implementation of programs like our revamped summer camp programs. So some positive news, and we can definitely get into workplaces, outdoor spaces, large gatherings. We've already been approached by a number of business owners and sport and recreational leagues on what that'll look like. Further on the report, if you look at page 4 of 18 of the report, we start going into just the departmental responses and initiative updates. I will take you through kind of the first 2 really quickly. Communications, there's a bit of an update as it relates to just the frequency and the level of engagement happening from a communication standpoint and some of the associated summaries in a time when people can't necessarily engage in the same way. Electronic communication and electronic engagements become even more important. Further down on that page, we head into economic development, and I will let Mr. Deaney speak to that after my brief introduction. We talk a little bit about the Niagara Economic Rapid Response Team. Paul and councillors highlighted that we were recently at Albright. We dropped off 250 masks at Albright, and that program around our masks and our face shields has been incredibly popular. A number of people have reached out, and there's been an overwhelming amount of gratitude to council for supporting this program. A little bit of an economic response to business outreach initiatives. There's a couple other people on the call. Matt Bruder, I think we forgot to mention him. Trish Sarnicki. For those individuals, Julie and her team are constantly going back and forth, working with those individuals wanting to access town hall in this new way. But kind of taking it back to the business outreach initiatives, Matt and Paul and Dan Smith, along with Kathleen, continue to work with our businesses and will over the next coming few days as we get ready for a Friday reopening. We've launched an economic development e-newsletter. Of course, everyone's aware of Shop Lincoln, and that was mentioned, and just a little bit of information on each of those. We prepare for AMO, and we continue to advocate both with FCM and AMO for funding from senior levels of government for the emergency costs that municipalities have incurred. I highlighted a little bit about legislative services and clerks. We are reaching out and are preparing for our citizen advisory committees to restart. I believe that was a motion that, or direction that Councillor Macpherson and a few other members of council had brought forward. Lincoln Fire Rescue, again, the issuance of fire permits, open air permits continues to be suspended, but we are dealing with that through other means. We continue to engage and communicate, and some of our training, which had been shifted online, is now starting to happen in an outdoor fashion and be reinstated. Planning and development, no shock to anyone, incredibly busy. I'll take you to page 10 at the top there. From May 31 to the beginning of the year, we've seen a construction value of almost $35 million. So a huge number and a huge testament to what people are doing and the work from our staff. Municipal law enforcement, collectively, between discussions, complaints, responses, Dan Smith and his team have probably had 2,000 interactions with members of our community. Of course, I highlighted community services is preparing for their reopening. And again, if there's any questions, Director McKay can speak to those. Our customer service staff continue to make outreach calls, totaling over 500 to seniors, 110 to businesses, and that program and outreach, as I said, continues. From a finance perspective, again, we continue to work and undertake the various analysis and preparations of our operating and capital budgets, cash flow, forecasting, reporting, and so forth. I think fast forwarding down to page 13, just a snapshot at IT, and those numbers are fairly staggering at just how busy our IT team is. Public Works, we received an update at our last meeting from Director Graham on the quarterly projects and where things stand. I will take you to the water meter project impact. This was a question and some direction that I had received last time I was in front of you almost 6 weeks ago with respect to reaching back out and seeing if we could negotiate something better than our worst case estimates. Happy to report collectively, Dave, Jillian, and their respective teams have been able to get our project fees decreased by 36%. And so our impact was not as high as we anticipated. And there may be a little bit more we can do there, but a positive piece of news there in terms of what we were able to negotiate. A little bit of an update from our library team who started curbside service on June 2nd and are extremely busy. And then last but not least, we have a section that highlights expenditures to date. You'll notice in that first line, we've updated our estimates from the report that was received in May. The report on May 4th, I believe, had a cumulative projection of about 90,000, 90 to 100,000. We're currently sitting at about 160,000 to the end of June. And I just want to take you to a few things that have had to be put in place since that time. A lot of it's really around upgrading our facilities to prepare to reopen to the public. Some of you who have seen pictures of or have been in the building dropping things off will notice town council chambers looks a lot different. So does town hall. There's a lot of plexiglass that's been put up. There's a lot of sneeze guards that have been put in. There's a lot of markings on the ground. We've also had to purchase and prepare for PPE and the amount of PPE that's going to be required, both in the Ministry of Labor and as directed by Public Health. And as well as I highlighted, our costs incurred to support the community through the pandemic. And a number of those fall to economic development. And Mr. Deaney can speak to those, everything from the Shop Lincoln website, our face shield program, and so forth. Our program and facility rental revenues sit at about 145,000. These estimates take us to June. I do want to highlight for council that we've gone to June because we really are following the process that the province has laid out, which is a very incremental process. Some municipalities are projecting and forecasting till year's end. From our perspective, we don't believe that is necessarily appropriate because, as I highlighted early on in my comments, we will be restarting our summer camp program. So I can't tell you the uptake on that and what that'll look like, but those revenues are crucial. We've had conversations with Lincoln Minor Hockey, and similarly, they are looking at some sort of program in the fall. A significant amount of our revenues come from hockey and hockey rates and hockey fees and ice time. And so again, we will continue to work with the respective agencies to determine what that looks like. A number of other municipalities don't offer, for example, summer camp programs. Those are outsourced, and so the decisions aren't necessarily in their hands. Where with us, those decisions do fall to us, but so do the revenues, and so we plan for those. We have $130,000, as has been reported the last couple of meetings, in terms of the interest and penalty waiver and those charges, and that is the impact from that perspective. Not a real change on the parking ticket projection. In terms of cost mitigation, again, I haven't done maybe what some of my colleagues have done and share with council. We've got a $400,000 impact, and I believe I can mitigate that exactly to the T, because I think until we look at restrictions, how they're fully relaxed, and what we're seeing in terms of what's allowed and not allowed as we head into this phase, it is premature. And so again, I've highlighted for council where we think we can make some of those anticipated savings. I will re-emphasize that the elimination of all non-essential travel, meeting expenses, conferences, and events have been canceled. We've deferred hiring, although now as we head into summer camp, we may be bringing staff back on, and I will update council if and when those decisions are made. And once again, from a cash flow perspective and an investment perspective, we remain in a positive state. Cash flow is not an issue for the town of Lincoln. We are in a strong position. Terry, our Director of Finance and Treasurer, can speak to that should council have any questions. So those are my estimate, or those are my comments. The total estimated budget pressure currently sits, as I highlighted, at about 445,000, and staff will be reporting as we move forward on the mitigation efforts and the value of those mitigation efforts. You're on mute, Matt.
You're suggesting then that the staff, that Ms. Trawala will provide us with any response on financial elements?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think my question was more, or my comment was more of a general comment that should council have any questions now, collectively, the team will respond. Of course, Terry can respond from a financial standpoint. Paul, as it relates to the various elements that cover him, but all staff are ready to answer any questions council may have on the report.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, who was first on the list?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have Councillor Bernay up first.
Okay, Councillor Bernay, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I guess maybe I'll direct it to the CAO and he could maybe toss it off appropriately. And I want to thank the CAO for this COVID-19 impact update. I'm sure that there's quite a bit of time and preparation for these, and this isn't the first one we've seen. So thank you very much for this update, Mr. CAO. And, we've heard a number of times the comment that the CAO used at the end of the report that cash flow is not a problem. And I take that as gospel. I'm not questioning that at all. But I guess I just have a couple of questions through you, Madam Mayor. And if it can't be discussed, I understand if we have to go into closed session, but I am having a hard time maybe comprehending the tax rate stabilization reserve. So I guess my first question through you, Madam Mayor, to the CAO is if someone could explain the tax rate stabilization reserve, how does that money come to, where does that money flow from? How much money is sitting in the reserve? And maybe a third part question to that is, have we dipped into that reserve to date during COVID?
Okay, let's clarify first if there's anything about this question that would need to be in camera, because these are normally things that we speak about quite publicly during budget. Madam Clerk, would you just clarify that just right at the beginning here?
Yeah, none of those questions would require us to go into close, Madam Mayor.
Very good. Okay, Mr. Krukopoulos, are you going to answer this question?
So through you, Madam Mayor, I will start to answer it, and Terry can speak to specifically what the reserve is designated to use and how these monies come from accumulated surpluses. I think I'd start by answering the question generally and saying that in our tax rate stabilization reserves, we have somewhere, I believe, in the range of 670,000. Terry can confirm the exact amount to the penny. I see her nodding, she's got it. We also have another working account, a working reserve account that has $1.5 million in it. And again, Terry, I think, can speak to both those reserves, the purposes of both those reserves. To answer the councillor's, I think, last question around, have we dipped into that? No, we have not dipped into that. That wouldn't happen until year end, and we'd be coming back to council should we need to dip into those reserves in any fashion to offset any of the potential deficits that we may have. So at this particular point in time, we haven't dipped into that. The tax rate stabilization reserve does have, as I said, about $670,000 in it. And we also have another reserve called a working reserve. And again, Terry can provide a little bit more information on that. That has $1.5 million in it. I do stand behind the comment, and I appreciate the councillor highlighting it, that from a cash flow perspective and a finance perspective, and this is both last term and the terms before, this council is in a very good financial position, and that is an important tenet and principle that council's established and continues to support. So I will turn it over to Ms. Trewalla to highlight how those reserves are set up or the purposes of those reserves.
Very good. Thank you very much. Ms. Trewalla?
So through the mayor, as Mike mentioned, we have 675,945 in our tax rate stabilization reserve. I'll mention first, we do have 1,475,000 in a working funds reserve. And the purpose of that reserve, it would have been set up many, many years ago. It's usually in municipalities where they don't have a lot of reserves, and it's a bit of the accumulated surplus that's been set aside to make sure that the town will have appropriate cash to do their day-to-day business. But it is there. It can be used in the same manner as a tax rate stabilization reserve. It just sits on its own. With the tax rate stabilization reserve, that's where we put our annual surplus. On an annual basis, if the actual expenditures are less than what was budgeted, we just automatically put it in there. If we have a year where there's a deficit, we come to council and council has to approve us taking the money out of the reserves. So in terms of the COVID expenses, we couldn't just decide to use it. We would need to come to council to ask for your permission to use it for that purpose.
All right. Thank you for the moment. Councillor Brunet?
Yeah, that's great, Madam Mayor. I do appreciate both the CAO and the Director of Finance, Acting Director of Finance, bring us up to speed on both of those reserves. That's something that I was not aware of, and I appreciate the information. Thank you very much.
I believe, Councillor Brunet, that we used, in the last term, I believe we did use the tax stabilization reserve to assist us. It was just prior to us making the decision to have the infrastructure levy. And so I do remember us using that once. I'm sorry, Mr. Kirkopoulos, did you have another comment?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think I was just going to highlight, and as we head into, I think, budget in 2021, oftentimes we talk about our reserves. Our auditors have suggested to members of the council on a number of occasions that our reserves are very healthy. And oftentimes reserves, like a tax rate stabilization reserve, is set up for those unforeseen circumstances. And I guess we may find ourselves, depending on how we're able to mitigate or not mitigate the potential expenses and what senior levels of government provide, probably coming to you specifically as it relates to that account. But I think we're not going to know until much more information becomes available.
Okay. So just for clarification, so one is called the tax rate stabilization reserve and the other one is referred to as a working fund reserve. Both require approval of council to remove money from them.
Correct.
Is council aware when money is put in them?
To you, Madam Mayor, I do bring a reserve report annually so you can see it. Not always. It'll usually be in the year-end report if money is going into it. For things such as our development charges reserve fund, we don't usually bring it to council except in our annual amount. So I would say generally no, but I do report it on an annual basis.
Okay, thank you very much. Satisfactory, Councillor Brunei.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right. Madam Clerk?
Next up, we have Councillor Rajima.
Councillor Njema.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question relating to an email that came out last week. A little bit of a clarification, if you wouldn't mind, and I believe this would go through to Mr. Deanny. I've had questions from wineries that I've been speaking to in my travels, picking up takeout food and bottle of wine, regarding what they can do at this point for wine tastings. What are their
Yes, Mr.
limitations?
Deanny. Very good. Mr. Deanny, I know you were dealing with this last week.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to the councillor. I'm sure the CEO would probably want to jump in here as well, because both of us have been triaging a lot of the calls from the different wineries that we've been getting over the past little bit, and working with Niagara Public Health and the Ontario Craft Wineries and the Tony Valley Tourism Association to really get some information out of there. So as we move to stage 2, starting on Friday, and actually the wineries could have done this last week, but starting on Friday, you know, they can have wine tastings, so outdoor wine tastings with groups of 10 or less. Those 10 individuals practicing physical distancing. These wine tasting groups will need to be done on a prearranged schedule. And following that group, before the next group comes in, the wineries will need to do some sanitization of highly touched places. And in addition, obviously using some plastic disposable glassware for the wine tastings. And then again, starting this Friday, because we are at Niagara, is moving into stage 2. Those wineries that do have a restaurant or a food establishment can start to sit patrons on their patio for food services. Again, you know, some physical distancing between customers. And of course, as the CEO had alluded to in his response, working with myself in planning, we've been working with a lot of the restaurants and wineries in the community on doing some patio expansion. So starting phase 2, councillor, or stage 2, the wineries can do a lot more than they've been able to do before, and a lot of them are quite happy and ecstatic that we're moving into stage 2.
Good to know. Thank you.
You're on mute, Madam Mayor. Councillor Rajima, did you have any other questions? No, you're on mute, but I think you said no.
I said no, I do not. Thank you.
Okay, the
All right.
next one that we have up is Councillor Pachariva, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pachariva.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, Mike, for the very fulsome report. Just one question, and you know, we strive to encourage our businesses to have an online portal. You know, we've got our Shop Lincoln website. You're constantly reminding me at budget time, we don't have an expense problem, we have a revenue problem. So how close are we to getting all of our forms digitized and online? You know, just pointing to you know, the burn permits, and you know, whether it's a function of the chief's benevolence and letting people congregate in their own backyard, or the fact that we can't do it online. So just curious, as we go through this, how are we, you know, IT's busy making sure everyone's in place, but how close are we to migrating all of our forms to an online portal where we can do these things?
Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I'd probably start my answer by saying that you know, we're not necessarily as far along as I think any of us would like. We've come a significant way in a very short period of time. There is still work to do on a number of our programs, and I would say it's not so much about getting them all online as it is about the various programs and functions talking to each other and making sure they integrate with one another better. It's often easy to get the forms online and digitized. What's often the next step that we really need to put time, effort, and energy around is making sure that we can talk to each other, or those forums virtually can talk to each other, so that we can utilize them to the best of our ability. And I think one of the things that will come out of, I think, COVID and pandemics is that look at how do we enter this very digital era that I think will come to be, and what are the programs we require, and what are the integrations that are required. At the end of the day, we have a review right now that's underway, a corporate systems review. Council will have heard about that. We've been asked questions about that from our consultant. We have a draft report that we would like to bring to council likely next month. It is going to SMT this week for a discussion, and there will be associated recommendations. So not necessarily as far along as I'd like, Councillor, but we're moving in that direction.
No, and that's terrific, Mike. Thanks. Because I mean, this came up with, at the library board when we discussed, signing up, and maybe we had a look at this at the past of compartmentalizing signups and registrations, and looking for that fulsome, holistic report to come from our consultant and then feed in to budget. Because I mean, we're going to be in this, and we've got to pivot, and if we're asking our business community to do the same, and some of them are coming up stellarly. I had a chat with Steve at Vianney's, and the online portion of their business is keeping them afloat, actually putting them ahead. So we need to do the same. So look forward to that. Thank you.
I mean, through you, Madam Mayor, I think one piece of good news, and I don't recall if Councillor Macpherson mentioned it or not, and that is the Digital Main Street announcement that came out of the government as well. It is something that we benefited from, the BIA benefited from, and really led the charge on last year. And I think we are looking at that between the Chamber, Mr. Deaney, and Ms. Hicks, how we support more of our businesses and bringing them online.
Is that satisfactory, Councillor Pachariva? Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, we have Councillor Macpherson.
Councillor Macpherson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and again to the CAO, very thorough, complete, detailed report. Thank you very much for the update. I guess my question, a couple things. First of all, I think I might have heard, Mr. CAO, that you mentioned your expectation is that you will mitigate the 445,000. Am I putting words in your mouth, or, I mean, that'd be great news, and I understand you're working hard at it, but it almost sounded like you were saying that the expectation is that we may not have to dip into those reserves. But my question is more, and I know the CAO does not want to move, or does not want to go forward from today, but my thought is about going forward, and what does that look like? And I think about one of our most significant revenue generators in being the hockey leagues, the Beansville Minor Hockey and Jordan Minor Hockey, and potentially, what does that look like come fall? So we're not that far away, and if we look, and I'm not expecting public numbers or anything like that, but I'm just wondering what kind of discussions are happening at the COVID emergency staff meetings on possibly, and I'll call it worst case, that if we are to enter the fall and our hockey is delayed or doesn't happen, and it's quite possible that could be the case, because even though we're seeing things opening up, you're entering in a whole new arena now with contact sport and dressing rooms and the whole thing. So I guess I'm just trying to put the thought out there that this could be a significant impact to revenue. And, are we doing sort of modeling around what ifs?
Thank you very much, Councillor. Mr. Kirkopoulos?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to start I think I'll start the question. And then definitely, I know Ms. McKay and her team have had some conversations on the hockey side, as have I. And I think Terry can talk a little bit about some of the forecasting we are doing. So, Councillor, I think, simply to answer your question, yes, we're thinking about it. Yes, we're playing out, I think, some worst case scenarios. I can tell you what we've heard from Lincoln Minor Hockey and the various associations, and those that play at Jordan will understand this better. For those that aren't necessarily into hockey, Jordan does not have a traveling type setup. It's more house league. We're likely going to see that happening out of Lincoln Minor Hockey and at the Fleming Center as well. There will be a lot less travel happening with hockey. There will be a number of stringent requirements, but you're right, Councillor. I think a lot of this is based on us continuing on the trend we're currently in,
right,
and not seeing a kind of a second wave of this, or a future wave, or a bad season kind of happening in the late fall, early winter. So we are looking at that, and I think from the perspective of staff, and we can definitely bring this back to the next committee. I think we're looking at, what does it look like if we don't have sports, and how do we mitigate those losses? What happens to our facilities? What happens to the staffing within our facilities? And those sorts of things. Are there other things we can potentially look to do in our facilities, if not hockey? But right now, I'd say I'm cautiously optimistic on the hockey side. They've revamped their model for hockey delivery. Of course, they need to get buy-in from associations and parents and so forth. It'll be a little different than coming in and watch, both sets of parents, watching kids play hockey and so forth. But there is a plan that they at least have at this time. But maybe Shannon and then Terry can kind of speak to both the modeling and the forecasting and what you're hearing on the rec side.
Okay, Shannon, Mackay, could we hear from you?
You're on mute, Shannon.
Sorry. Through you, Madam Mayor, we're in regular contact. We talk weekly with all of our sport associations. So we are planning for the worst, I suppose you can say, but hoping for the best. As announcements continue to be released, both by governing bodies and the province and public health, we are turning to those groups to find out what their plans are. We are also conducting a survey. It hasn't gone out yet, but it will go out to families and residents and all sport users, just about their comfort level with returning to sport, returning to programming, returning to activities. And as the CAO alluded to, if hockey does not happen or happens in a very different way, we may look to augment what we can offer there with other offerings. So, we've been creative on some of our summer adventure camp plans for this summer, and we'll do the same for fall and winter programming. But it's really a wait see at this point. Yes, we can do all the modeling with the financials because we have them. We know typically who our groups are and our associations are, and we have that historically. But as far as how we're planning, we're being cautiously optimistic that something will happen, and then we'll look to augment that hopefully with new opportunities.
Councillor Macpherson.
Yeah, that's really good. I think my train of thought was more financial, more the financial impact. I think it's great that we would provide alternative programming for those that would miss out, but but simply my question is, you know, have we looked at, okay, we can't start in September. Here's the financial impact. Okay, we can't start till November 1st. Here's the financial impact. You know, that type of modeling, if you will. Hey, we can't start till January 1st. Here's the financial impact of what that means, and then we have other decisions to make. So that's where the question was going. Just hoping it doesn't, but just you know, making sure that we are looking at that possibility. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I could just, sorry, go ahead, Madam Mayor.
No, please proceed.
So through you, Madam Mayor, I think further to the councillor's comment, we had always, I think there was two scenarios we were working with. One very, I think, specific as it related to kind of what I would call a 3-month lockdown period that expires June 30th and prepares for July 1st openings. And it looks like we are on that kind of trajectory for some sort of you know, movement even beyond stage 2 that would see things open more, and then something that would take us beyond that. But we hadn't put a time frame to it. We were looking at that. So maybe Terry, you could provide just a little bit of kind of the forecasting stuff we're doing for Councillor Macpherson.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Walla.
Sorry. So through the mayor, we are taking a look at the various options. We're keeping an eye on the revenue and are looking at those different situations that could be coming up. The hesitation we're sharing it with council is that it can vary widely. I mean, even just looking at our forecasting and modeling, there's just too many uncertainties right now. Without knowing where the COVID virus is going to go. So without having more confidence in even projections, it's not very useful information at this time anyway, sorry. But we're keeping an eye on it.
All right, Councillor Macpherson, I think you have this is a good question that you've asked, and I guess that's related to something we know, which is that today the summer camp offerings were put out there. Is there a relationship, I'll send this to you, Mr. CAO, for distribution. Maybe is it reasonable that once we see what the response is to the summer camps, because they're taking on a different complexion, that there could be a relationship between that and what might happen or what may need to happen if some new offerings are made available in the fall, if hockey just isn't able to find its legs.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and that was really where I was going. I was going to commit to the councillor through this question and to all of council that for the July report back, a very similar report as this, we will do a lot more of that forecasting and kind of scenario planning for council to the best of our ability. Yes, at times, you know, we're shy with, I think, projecting things that we don't know because it changes on a daily basis sometimes and based on the direction from public health and what are some of the mandates coming from government. But we will work on that report back, Councillor Macpherson, for July that lays out maybe with a little more specificity some of those kind of scenarios, whether they be worst case or more likely as well.
I'm fine with that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the CEO. I like these reports. I think it's important for us to know, you know, how things are moving, as well as the financial impact that residents may or may not face. I'm gonna carry on a little bit with Councillor Macpherson there. In a May 4th report, we had a projected cost of $325, and now in this report we're at $445,000. So that's quite a bit of a difference from 1 month to the next. This to me has me worried about what happens next month or the month after. So I I'd really like to see, I'd really like to see that we flatten that curve a little bit. You know, it's if it's at all possible. I don't know. That's quite a substantial difference. But you explained that somewhat with the additional unforeseen costs with regards to the PPE and the modifications to council chamber. I don't know if you want to carry on a bit with that, Mr. CEO.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Mikulik. Do you have anything further, Mr. Krikopoulos, that you could expand on?
For you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate the councillor's question, and the councillor's right. 6 weeks or so ago, probably 8 weeks when we started writing the report, what was known was less information. There's definitely things that have happened over the last 2 months that would take us to this particular point. Of course, a little bit more on the revenue side, we were able to determine there's been some increases or decreases in the amount of revenue. So there's a little bit of an impact there, I think, as the councillor highlights. And of course, we hadn't really developed our economic development program in terms of how we were helping. So I know Paul can speak to some of those costs a little bit more specific. And a big part of that, just, we saw the increase in the amount of enforcement that needed to happen. So definitely on the staffing side, and Mr. Bruder can speak to that if council has any questions, but our bylaw staff have been extremely busy. And of course, just the PPE. It's been mandated through Ministry of Labor and the Ontario Public Health authorities around when and our staff need to wear certain PPE, how we don and take off masks, the frequency of disposal of those masks. So we have bought those supplies and incorporated those into our forecasts moving forward as well. So, but the councilor's absolutely right. I think, forecasting, and this I think highlights it, is both good and at times I think when we put numbers out there, we don't necessarily meet them. That then causes questions, but they're good questions. There's I think appropriate answers for them. And so, definitely at our next report, I think, further to the promise to Councillor Macpherson, we will be back with a little bit more of that scenario planning to include some of those. But Paul may want to speak to economic development and Matt, just from an enforcement standpoint.
Yes, thank you, Mike, and through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. So, really when we started the pandemic, and our responses has been both at a regional and a local level. And the regional is a little bit more in terms of what we can do across the region in supporting all the municipalities and our businesses. And our local response has really been around some actionable items that we can do to support our businesses here in the town of Lincoln. As you can see through the website, we've had a phenomenal response on the website, as Councillor Macpherson had mentioned. And then we started to pivot to the PPE and supporting our businesses through face shields. That way both customers and employees alike could feel safe and welcoming in these business establishments. The response has been overwhelmingly possible for the face shields throughout our community, and many businesses are very happy that the town has taken this initiative. And as you can see in the report, we initially started off with 150, not sure how many would pick us up on this, put in a subsequent order for a second 150, which obviously went very, very quickly, and has subsequently put in an order for 1,000, which is going quickly again. So the idea is we as we tried to sort of, estimate what the pickup would have been, we had to start out small and then obviously moving to a little bit larger. So while there is a cost associated with supporting our businesses in the community, both through the face shield, PPE, and the website, the response in our businesses, as Councillor Macpherson had mentioned, has been overwhelmingly possible. So a small price, I think we can pay to support our businesses in the community.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deanne.
Thank you very much. And I do have a couple more questions, if I may, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
I was curious with the 6% increase in the current property tax arrears, and I thought I thought that might have been higher. I know we normally typically have businesses that don't pay their taxes on time for whatever reason, but through all of this, we only had a 6% increase where I would have guesstimated it to be a little bit higher. What are our thoughts moving forward in the next round? How do we have a plan as to how we're going to address the next payment option? What are we expecting from the next? How do we plan on addressing any possible needs? I think the 6% is actually a positive sign in the community, and I want to make sure that we continue and help those that truly need the help. And just if you could help me understand what your thoughts are on estimating.
Mr. CAO.
Through you, Madam Mayor, why don't I start, and then I'll definitely turn it to Terry. So the councillor's right. I believe our numbers went down from 87% or about 13% that were in arrears to 81.5% or 18.5%. So about a 6.5% change, give or take. I think a lot smaller than probably all of us anticipated. I don't think anyone knew at the time when every municipality really in the province looked at waiving penalty and interest charges for that period from April 1 to June 30th, what the impact would be and how many people would take us up on that. So I think it was a surprise to all of us. For us, we've highlighted in the report that there was some foregone revenue of approximately $130,000. The councillor highlighted what are we doing moving forward? And I think in the report, under interest and penalty waivers, we highlighted for council that at the current time, I believe it's only one municipality, unless that's changed since we wrote the report, that have extended the grace period beyond June 30th for another 3 months to September. As I highlighted there, it is an option we can consider. Such an extension applies to all properties and does not put a means test per se in place. A few of the other municipalities that we've had conversations with are looking at another approach, and that is more of a targeted campaign, a community outreach type campaign, where we make it very well known, and we are doing this already, that should individuals or businesses have problems making their payments, should they have issues, that they can reach out to us, they can chat with us, we can look at further grace periods, we can look at a payment option and payment plans, whether that be front ending, back ending, a whole number of things that our finance department can do. The difference between this is the property owner has to then seek us out and seek out that extension and assistance versus the other approach, which is very much a blanket approach covering everyone. So there are those two options highlighted in the report, Councillor. If Council was to choose one over the other, we may be able to better forecast what the potential impacts would be. If you were to do a blanket, a blanket extension to September, we'd probably anticipate it being again in that $100,000 range for an additional quarter, and so you would see that right off the bat. If we did a campaign where we reached out and encouraged people to reach out to us, that's the one we don't know, because then it does put the onus and the responsibility on the individual to make connection with the town. So Terry may be able to speak to that a little bit more.
Yes, through the mayor, just to talk about the number itself, it has gone from 12.5 of current arrears to 18.5. So considering the number that it was starting at, 6% is a bit of a jump. But we didn't see very many people reaching out to us to come off of pre-authorized payment plans. It may be that people were still able to make their payments at that point because the financial hadn't hit them just yet. So we'll keep an eye out on the next tax due date as well. As Mike was alluding to, I think it's best to offer to tax residents if they're in any sort of need, to reach out to our tax clerk. We're being quite flexible with payment plans, and if you need to make alternate arrangements, we will happily do so to meet your needs. And that'll just ensure that the people who actually need the help are getting the help. Whereas with a blanket waiver, it's just everybody gets a little bit of a break, but it goes back to the bottom line, and then we'll need to be funded somehow. So I think that's
terrific. And if I may, Madame Mayor, one more question. I like what I saw in the report with regards to the water meter replacement, reaching out to the contractor. Now, would it make sense to reach out further, given the fact that we've now moved into a phase 2? Prior to us as a municipality negotiating with that contractor, we were still quite restrictive, but now moving into a phase 2 model, the rules have changed somewhat. And I just think to myself, if my hot water heater was to blow up, I'm quite confident that at this time I could have hot water within 2 days. If that was to happen, would it make sense for us to further negotiate with the contractor in light of the new announcement that's been made today?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Mayor?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think notwithstanding today's announcement, I think it's always, I don't think it ever hurts to do it. So I'll take that as council direction to definitely go back and have a further conversation with the parties subject to the contract. And if we can do more than the amount we've been able to negotiate down, I think that's always better. So absolutely, Councillor. But Director Graham may also have something to add.
Go ahead, Director Graham.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is the program we're looking at, like, I guess it would be probably the last week of May, around that time frame. So we restarted the water meter program, a portion of it, as it relates to commercial and large meters. And we're anticipating starting up the residential component of the program in early July. So as we restart the entire water meter replacement program, then our costs of, in terms of the contractor not being able to work are no longer a concern. So I think we're moving into the phase now where we're not going to experience those extra costs because we're actually restarting the program.
Okay, does that help, Councillor Mikulik?
Yep, I'll bow out for now.
Okay, so just for clarification, Mr. Graham, you're anticipating then, sorry, Mr. Kirkopoulos, you're going to go back, you're going to have another discussion based on what Director Graham just identified in terms of less cost. We should see then those fees go down even further.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I mean, that would be my hope, but I think anytime I can take with me council's desire to see further savings, I think that adds a level of assistance to my ask of our consultants.
You consider yourself asked. All right, thank you very much, Councillor Mikulik, and I have Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Being the last one to speak, I think most of my questions have been answered, but I decided I would add some comments. It's an excellent report. It certainly tells a story, and I read a lot of positives in this report, and some interesting things too as well with the open air burn permits. I had a lot of questions, probably because of the area that I live in around the open air burning, and kind of happy to hear that there hasn't been a real increase. And Chief Hudson, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, what your thoughts are on it. It seemed that more people were burning, but there hasn't been any increase in the bylaw infractions. Is that correct?
Go ahead, Mr. Hudson.
Through you, Madam Mayor. That's correct, Councillor. It seems that people have been burning responsibly. I think we always do get the odd complaint, and quite frankly, a lot of them are neighbor complaints rather than actual legitimate fire complaints. But this year really hasn't seen an increase over other years, which we're happy to see, obviously.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to read that, but it's a good thing to hear. My other question was around the interest in penalties, and I reached out to Ms. Terwala earlier in the week, and I just would like all of us to be aware that this option is available for people that are struggling, that the tax department will work with you and set up payments. And I know the numbers are small, but there are some people out there that perhaps would need that kind of assistance. So really happy to hear that. And we certainly are doing everything we can to support our community in all areas. So just very pleased with this report overall. And thank you to our CAO.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity to speak again. I was respecting the 3-question rule, so I felt I asked the 3. I'm going to push it with a 4th. If I may, through you to Legislative Services, Julia Kirklos, I'm curious with regards to future meetings that are, involve planning. We're working on a method to include the public in these meetings. And recently now, I see churches are allowing 30% occupancy. I see, we're working on council chambers to be more, COVID friendly. Is there an opportunity to, say, have a hybrid or, a hybrid council meeting, or some sort of way for residents to participate, up to 30% within chambers? Reason I ask is I'm worried about some people not having access to reliable internet, and there could be some angst, some concerns, some stress over that. Is there any, how's Legislative Services, where are we at in that regard?
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor.
Madam Clerk. Thank you. Through the mayor to the councillor. With respect to public meetings for council commencing in July, we've been working with IT and other municipalities to develop a best practice approach on administering public meetings and ensuring that it's accessible either by phone, internet, and through the electronic platform like this. So not only could they attend by electronically, but also call in. So we're trying to develop what that looks like, if it's a special extension that they call, if it's a special phone number that we set up just for this purpose. We've also equipped council chambers with signage so we can accommodate up to 30 people sitting in the gallery with the social distancing that's in place. We've also equipped the councillor's horseshoe table with plastic partitions, as well as for the staff table as well. So that's already in place. I've been working with facility staff and we've already developed that. As soon as we are ready to go and open our doors, right now we're not there yet. However, once that the recovery team and the EOC determines that we can do so in a safe manner to not only protect the staff, but also the public appropriately, we will open up the doors to council chambers when it's safe to do so. However, you don't need an internet connection in order to attend a public meeting. So that's why I'm working with IT to develop what that looks like. So either by phone, even written format, things of that nature. That's still to come.
Okay, thank you. And Now, will through you, Madam Mayor, just to follow up, will that coincide with a possible opening of Town Hall with respect to being able to enter Town Hall, pay bills personally, you know, work with staff to that effect, recognizing distance separation and the plexiglass?
So as the CAO has touched on, we've already equipped Town Hall and facilities with the appropriate signage that's on the floor, as well as the plexiglass that's up on the counters. So when we're serving those customers, similar to what you would see at a grocery store, we have that barrier there. But I can let the CAO touch on that a little bit more.
Mr. Kirkopoulos?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor, I think we're definitely working towards a reopening of Town Hall and what that looks like. I can't say that that's going to happen next month. I think we're still a few months out from that. I think it's something that all the CAOs are talking. This is, again, one of those things where we're trying to be somewhat consistent across the various municipalities. There's likely going to be a phased approach to that in terms of who comes back into Town Hall and how quickly. And some of that is just dependent on the facility itself and can we maintain social distancing in certain areas. So definitely our goal would be to get everybody back here as soon as possible. But we're really at the discretion of public health, what that looks like. And I think slowly reintroducing staff back to the building. There's a number of staff that can continue to do their work remotely. And so they probably are in a subsequent phase of kind of coming back to Town Hall. Some of our staff that work at front desks that interact with people a lot, again, we'll need to go through the right training, the sign off on all the new standard operating procedures. But I think my simple answer is yes, we're working towards that. But something that I think Niagara and the province, I'd say the broader GTHA, want to do the same way. Because a lot of people interact with multiple municipalities. And Julie is seeing that just by people from Toronto coming here for marriage certificates. Planning specifically also deals a lot with people that interact with multiple municipalities. So we're working towards a full kind of reintegration.
And so, Councillor, if I could just extend your question a bit, because it sounds to me like if you can come, are people physically coming to get the marriage certificates, or is this all being done online? Madam Clerk?
So it's a bit of a hybrid, if you will. So right now we have been communicating mostly through email, and then what we do is we go through a COVID questionnaire form prior to the appointment itself. And once that is all fine and great, and we've confirmed all of the information to move forward with the marriage licensing or commissioning or civil ceremony, if you will, any one of those services, we give the appointment with a date and time. And our deputy clerk has been doing a great job with that and wearing the proper PPE. And then going out at that time, pretty much in the parking lot, and we meet them there, and then we exchange the documents and the payment from there. It's been working very well. And we've made sure that we have the proper SOPs in place to accommodate the COVID situation that we are facing right now.
So my question really is, if a constituent went to any of the councillors and indicated that they were facing some limitations. I understand that there are some people who prefer to pay their taxes with cash only, that other people have other personal processes that they use to go about their business with the town hall. Who do they talk to in order to be able to carry those conventions on so that they're not inconvenienced or don't feel that this system is disenfranchising them in some way?
Well, we've been receiving quite a few phone calls, and not only my staff, but finance, as well as community services and public works, on how best they can handle getting these services met. And one of the reasons why we opened up our services, even for commissioning, is because there was a lack of municipalities doing this. Now, we were able to put the proper procedures and protection in place in order to protect staff and the public, in order to meet the demands on what we were receiving as a municipality. And so we were able to accommodate that. But as for paying of taxes and water bills, I'll hand that to Terry, but I see the CAO has his hand up first.
Go ahead, Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Through you, Madam Mayor, without getting into the details of each particular service, I want to assure council, because I'm not sure. So maybe there's some confusion, maybe there's not. Maybe it's good for us to provide this clarification. In no way is any service other than the one that requires you to come in being in any way impacted. And even in the cases of those who would need to come in, we are finding solutions to address the service delivery of our work outside of that. And so whether that be a planning application, whether that be any of the other interactions the residents have with the municipality, we are servicing all of our residents. I would say as much as we were before. The only difference for those that appreciate or that like the comfort of coming in to pay things or to interact face to face and in person, and maybe don't have a familiarity or a comfort with technology, we have to make some ulterior or plans that are a little bit different, that require a little bit more creativity. But I would say in every other case, most people are comfortable dealing with us on the phone. I happen to run into a lot of people at Town Hall in the parking lot, either when I'm going out to get a coffee, when I'm coming in, or when I'm leaving, looking to replace garbage cans. Some call us or looking to replace recycling containers. And I try to deal with those again on a one-off basis. Sometimes I will go inside the building, I will get it for them, I will bring it out. And then those that call, we're also trying to help them and accommodate. We've got a couple of those through Councillor Macpherson, for example. And again, I have figured out how to get people the products and the services they need. But I wouldn't want any council member to leave or to think we're not providing the same level of service that we always have.
And so, Mr. CEO, with the additional detailed explanation, I think what you have done is reassured the public that there's a lot of different things that happen in people's households and in their habits, and that to the greatest extent possible that they are being accommodated and they will continue to be accommodated, including quiet, on the side, private conversations that may have to do with people's financial circumstances where some consideration will have to be given, and you're prepared to do that as well.
Absolutely, through you, Madam Mayor. Absolutely.
Okay. Councillor Mikulik, do you feel satisfied?
I feel good about that. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just, when you pull up to Town Hall and you go there and it looks closed, it has an, it may appear to be closed, but I want people to know, and I want the residents to know that it is open. If it's not open the way you traditionally know it to be open or prefer it to be open, there are ways for staff to reach out and service its residents. So no, I appreciate that answer, Mr. CEO. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see anyone else's name. My comments on this report would be that, I think there's time for sizzle and there's time for steak. It's a kind of a report, I think, where I prefer the steak. It's solid. Doesn't include every detail, but I think the source of the questioning was very probing, and each time the report becomes more detailed, maybe possibly with more objectives in mind. And so we'll look forward to that we're certainly not looking for a good news story here. We're looking for the news as it is in reality, and I think that's what we're getting. So we'll look forward to the next update. Thank you very much, Mr. CEO. I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva and seconded by Councillor Macpherson that report AD 04-20 COVID-19 impact update be received for information. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Please remove your mics off of mute. Councillor Brunei,
Yay.
Councillor Macpherson,
Yay.
Councillor Miklick,
Yay.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yay.
Councillor Reimer,
Yay.
Councillor Rajima,
Yay.
Councillor Russell marked absent, Councillor Timmers,
Yay.
Mary Easton,
Yay.
and that carries.
Councillors, we move on now to item 9.2, report CS-03-2020, the Whipple Trust Fund and BIA request. Ms. McKay, Ms. Mackay, you're with us. Director of Community Services will provide an overview.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So yes, we came to you back in April to ask for your approval of the disbursement and the allocation of the Whipple Trust Fund. At that time, we had indicated the Beamsville Lawn Bowling Club, the Beamsville District High School, partnered with BIA, and Lincoln Garden Club were the groups that had made requests in 2020. And we were asking for approval for the monies to go forward for the monies for the Beamsville Lawn Bowling Club and the BDS school, as staff had approved that application. But then we found out shortly before coming to council that because of the school closures, the horticultural class could not actually take on this project at that time. So respectfully, the BIA withdrew its application. The BIA has come to us, to the town and to council to request that we reconsider the allocation of those funds that were approved by the evaluation committee, and that they be used to hire a local company to produce the inserts for the existing 20 barrels that are already decorated and can be put out from last year. So they won't be increasing the barrels and bloom program this year to 30 barrels as they had hoped originally, but they will be able to create the inserts with this additional fund of $1,500. So that is the ask, and you have attached to the report the letter from the BIA. Staff are in full support of this ask. We think it's a great beautification project, an award-winning beautification project, and we know that as we start to transition and return to recovery, that flowers are important and beautification of this is important to our downtown, to our business area. So we are respectfully asking for council support in moving forward with this.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Mackay. Members of council, do you have any questions or any comments on the report? Seeing none, I have a motion moved by Councillor Macpherson and seconded by Councillor Linchima. Approve the disbursement of $1,500 to the Downtown Bench Beamsville BIA to support the implementation of the 2020 Barrels Bloom Floral Program as outlined in report CS-03-20. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Councillor Brunei,
Yay.
Councillor Macpherson,
Yay.
Councillor Miklick,
Yay.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yay.
Councillor Reimer,
Yay.
Councillor Rajima,
Yay.
Councillor Russell marked absent, Councillor Timmers,
Yay.
Mary Easton,
Yay.
and that carries.
Thank you very much. Councillors, we will now consider item 9.3, report PD-08-20, 4105 Fly Road Heritage Designation Application. You have the report before you. Ms. Dale, would you please present the report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. So this report was actually on the committee agenda. I think it was back in March before all of the meetings were canceled. So we're bringing this report forward now. This property is at 4105 Fly Road. There's a house on the property known as the Morat's home. The owners want this property designated. The designation was supported by, as I mentioned, the owner, the Heritage Committee as well. And there was a Heritage consultant review done. So the features of the property do support a Heritage designation. So what staff are recommending is that the Heritage designation move forward. So the next step in the process is for staff to publish a notice of decision. And if there's no appeals, the next step after that, there would be a bylaw presented to council to formally designate the property.
All right, councillors, any questions or comments to the report? Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Mary Easton. I just have a comment regarding having this on the agenda tonight. Very happy to see it here. The Morose family did approach the Heritage Committee with a request to designate this home. It's adjacent to the Bucknell Barn, which it states in the report, and was originally the Bucknell Barn was the barn to this home. Very excited to see this and look forward to the outcome of designation down the road. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions. See no other names coming up. I have a motion moved by Councillor Brunet and seconded by Councillor Timmers. Council support the recommendation of the Municipal Heritage Committee and the Heritage Consultant to designate the Moyer Morose home at 4105 Fly Road in Camden, and staff be directed to issue a notice of intention to designate the Moyer Morose home at 4105 Fly Road in Camden. Madam Clerk, would you call the vote?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll begin with Councillor Brunet,
Yay.
Councillor Macpherson,
Yay.
Councillor Miklick,
Yay.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yay.
Councillor Reimer,
Yay.
Councillor Rajima,
Yay.
Councillor Russell marked absent, and Councillor Timmers,
Yay.
and Mayor Easton,
Yay.
and that carries.
Item 9.4, councillors, is report PD-09-20, Bill 189, Coronavirus Support and Protection Act 2020. And again, our Director of Planning and Development will introduce this report. Ms. Dale, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor and members of council. So Bill 189, what it basically does is during the emergency, it puts all of the Planning Act timeframes on hold. And the reason for that is across the province, there's a number of municipalities, particularly a lot of the smaller municipalities, where you have a lot of the planning staff that are also involved in the emergency management side of things, which makes it somewhat difficult to process a lot of planning applications during those timeframes. So basically what this does is all of the Planning Act timeframes were put on hold, which gives council additional time to make a decision. We do expect, based on a recent letter that just came in on Friday from the Minister of Municipal Affairs, that this time frame or the hold on the Planning Act timeframes will expire on June the 22nd. So after that time, the normal Planning Act timeframes will come into effect. We were quite lucky in the way that some of our decisions were sent out, that at this time we only have to actually issue one notice of decision, and that's for the condominium application on Green Lane. So that'll be issued once the provincial emergency is over with. The other thing that this legislation also did is, as council will recall, there was an interim control bylaw passed for cannabis That was extended this year until July the 6th. Now, no, I believe it's July the 6th. It's in July. So normally that bylaw would have expired. However, with Bill 189, what happens is you take the time frame from March to potentially the date in July or in June, sorry, you add that to the July timeframe. So that actually extends the time frame for that interim control bylaw. Now, staff are planning to bring a report back on the cannabis changes to the official plan, the zoning, and some licensing. We're potentially bringing that back in May. As well, during this time, if council does make a decision on applications, then the appeal periods, if it's after April 15th, would kick in. It's just that the time frame, if there is an appeal, to send the package off to LPAT was put on hold. I think that's pretty much it. If there's any questions or comments.
All right. Councillor Macpherson, why don't you start?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just wanted to make a quick comment and reading through the report. Sounds like we're fairly clean with what we had on our table. Thank you for the clarification on the cannabis piece. That's kind of how I had put it together in my own mind. So it sounds like September sometime we are looking at that coming back. And I know that sets us up pretty nicely with reports, I believe, that are coming in August. July, August, September sometime. So that's good. And it looked like there was really only a couple of appeals that were the only kind of glitches, if you could call them that. So thank you for the update. And it sounds like we're in pretty good shape.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Madam Clerk, who is next?
We have Councillor Timmers next.
Councillor Timmers?
Thank you, Mary Easton. My question was actually around the interim control bylaw as well. Through to Director Dale. Could you just, okay, I just want to verify. So we are extending till September. Can we extend again beyond that or no? I'm just lost sight of where we are right now with our interim control bylaw regarding cannabis.
Okay, sure. Through you, Madam Mayor. When you do an interim control bylaw, you can first pass it for 1 year. We did that some time ago. You can then extend it for an additional year. The decision was made to extend it to July. So it will run out in July. So normally, if we weren't under this Bill 189, if we don't have something in place, it would expire in July. However, because of Bill 189, we've got the time frame between March 17th until sometime in June. We add those dates to the July date, the expiry date. So that gives us a bit more time to get the proper planning and licensing rules in place.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I just wanted to be clear on it. Thank you very much.
Councillor Nchima.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, it's really good to have this information. It's very clear about what the timelines were or are under normal circumstances, and how this bill has changed things for the time being. So as far as the Utopia condos on Green Lane, their condo application, I'm trying to find the information. Okay, so they were granted draft approval, and the fact that the notice will be issued at the end of the emergency period, is that holding them up at all?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, actually, it won't hold them up at all. It's really all we're going to do is take the decision that was issued and change the date and reissue it. It just means that their draft approval period they'll actually have a little bit more time in their draft approval period, because normally you have your draft approval is good for 3 years. So they'll actually have a little bit of extra time. So they may benefit if their construction takes a little bit longer.
Okay, thank you. And Madam Mayor, I have one more question if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
And that's regarding, I think it's one zoning bylaw amendment for those, for Azalea and for Victoria Avenue. Is that one application that we're talking about? No, it's two. Okay. So there's two that have been appealed and two that we don't have a date for those appeals. So is there any talk about them holding hearings? I think they're holding case management conferences. That's what I've heard. Have they scheduled? Have they created a tentative schedule, or how to what extent are these applications being held up?
Well, I guess, is this report, does this report and the content of the report have an impact on those applications?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the actual report that staff has written does not impact it. It's actually Bill 189 and how, LPAT is not holding any hearings. So they're actually, I'm trying to recall the exact date. I believe it was June, it was sometime in June. There actually was supposed to be a conference call, conference type hearing. So we're just awaiting to see when that's going to be rescheduled. So I know we followed up with LPAT, but we haven't heard back yet.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. Is that satisfactory, Councillor?
Yes, it sounds like the fact that there was a date set in June and it's just been rescheduled, then I guess whoever's on that list is going to be first up whenever there's a date scheduled. I've heard complaints and concerns about the scheduling of the LPAT hearings, that things aren't moving nearly as fast as they potentially could.
But that has nothing to do with us.
No, it has nothing to do with us.
Okay.
That's right. But it does concern us when our applications that are within our municipality are being held up.
Right. Do you have anything to add to that, Ms. Dale? Any actions that we can take?
Through you, Madam Mayor, as I mentioned previously, really all staff can do is just follow up with the caseworker to see if it has been scheduled. But unfortunately, we don't have a lot of control over how LPAT schedules their hearings. And I think LPAT was affected the same way municipalities were because of the COVID situation, where they were doing, formal hearings with the public and things like that. They could no longer do that. And they even put some of their scheduling on hold. And we're hoping that we're just hoping that this particular one will be rescheduled shortly.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Njima. Well, we have no other names. And I have a motion by Councillor Reimer and seconded by Councillor Michalek. Receive report PB-09-20 regarding Bill 189, Coronas COVID-19 Support and Protection Act 2020 for information. Madam Clerk, if you would call the vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Please remove your mics off of mute. Councillor Brunet.
Yay.
Councillor Macpherson.
Yay.
Councillor Michalek.
Yay.
Councillor Pachariva.
Yay.
Councillor Reimer.
Yay.
Councillor Regina.
Yay.
Councillor Russell is marked absent, and Councillor Timmers.
Yay.
Mayor Easton.
Yay.
And that carries.
Thank you very much. Councillor Michalek, I see your name, I see your hand up. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to
Sorry
make
about
sure
my apologies. I didn't mean to do that.
That's quite all right. All right, now we have motion to approve correspondence. There is none for this evening. However, item 11, motion to receive and file council information. We are considering the following items We have information packages from May 22nd, May 29th, and June 5th. I'll entertain questions on the May 22nd package. And try and be as specific as you can. It's helpful. There's such big packages. Councillor Macpherson, what is your item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My item is item number 3, Fort Erie high-speed connectivity, and it's page 77 of 88. And my question through to the CAO is simply, where does Lincoln sit with regards to high-speed connectivity? How are we doing?
Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll also let Terry chime in on this one because we did talk about it earlier. We're probably doing better than a number of municipalities that I would consider more rural and don't have the level of connectivity. Most of our issues are on the outskirts of the municipality. Everything kind of that either is adjacent to an urban or a more urbanized setting or a major thoroughfare doesn't necessarily experience this. But is there more to do? I know our IT staff are working with finance to make sure that that we're ready to apply for the various intakes, the most recent intakes, and we've supported them as larger Niagara municipalities have been in other parts of the province. And so, are we doing as well as I'd like us to do, and I think everyone would like us to do? No. But is there room for us to improve from the perspective of tapping into these programs? Yes, I think we need to create our own solutions locally in terms of working with local partners or looking at providing Wi-Fi and other points of connection. Because I think if we're waiting for some of the provincial programs, they're definitely being directed in more of the eastern and northern parts of our province at the current time. And so, Terry, I don't know if you've got a little bit more to add on that in terms of broadband and what that looks like. I know, Councillor Macpherson, it's really, it's in the hands of the private companies in the private sector. And so I think right now, the challenge with that is what is the incentive for them to expand into various rural markets. So at the end of the day, there will need to be public investment. And I think that's where things like NRBN, that's where things like SWIFT and so forth come into play. But Terry, you may have a little bit more to add to that.
So through the mayor, you covered a lot of the points that I would say as well. Our IT is keeping very up to date on the various programs that are being offered. NRBN did submit an application recently to hopefully get some of the federal dollars. Lincoln wasn't part of that initial application just because they wanted to go with an area that was easier. Like our system is going to be really complex to update. So they went with an area that would be a little bit easier to update in order to help get some results and to help build the business case in order to get additional funding for the other areas as well. But we're staying in contact with the group that's putting together those applications and the ones that are working on the incentive funding, just to keep our name in there so that they can hopefully include us on the next round.
Mayor Easton, if I could just through the councillor address, and I'm reminded just looking through my notes that we did submit an application for funding through CENGEN. And I know Mr. Deanny was involved in that application, so maybe he can speak to a little bit of the CENGEN application.
Mr. Deanny, please.
Yes, thank you. I just want to confirm, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, and Mr. CEO, and through you, Madam Mayor. So at the end of May, the town of Lincoln did submit an application to CENGEN's Rural Ontario Residential Broadband Program, which is a program basically focusing on a few different areas throughout the province, and one of them being the Niagara region. So both private sector and public sector organizations could apply for this funding. I know ourselves obviously did put it in an application as well as NWIC. And the idea is, if successful, this would be a joint application to the joint program to actually roll out some broadband throughout the community. Let me tell you, if I can sort of make add on to this, my commentary here. Pre-COVID, I didn't hear very many complaints about broadband in the community. Obviously, with COVID now, more people being at home and more businesses relying on e-commerce and transaction, there's been obviously a lot more of a concern in the community around broadband. So this is a number one on our list in terms of how we can solve. So hopefully, if successful on this SenGen application and the stuff that Director Tarala had commented on, we can move the community more forward towards a broadband connectivity.
So,
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Mike and Paul for that. It certainly sounds like, you know, in the greater urban area, our signals are strong, but when we get out in the rural area, which is what this is, this high-speed connectivity in the rural area, it sounds like we also suffer from some connectivity issues. So is there anything that you need from council to support efforts to improve that? Any direction, it sounds like you're moving along that line anyway, but is there anything that you need from us? In other words, should we be supporting this Fort Erie motion, or are we okay doing what we're doing?
Mr. CAO?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. You know, I mean, I think there's always benefit in supporting the push in terms of what other municipalities are doing. Maybe staff can go back and Councillor maybe connect with you if there's a motion or a direction or anything that can be brought forward at the next meeting that I think helps us further along. Our application is in terms of SenGen. I think, you know, we're aware of where Swift's at with kind of its rural broadband and the outreach. Maybe let's do a little more research on NRBN and what they're doing and come back to council to determine if there's anything else.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. And did you have anything else, Councillor Macpherson? All right. In that package, in the May 22nd package, on the next page, just following the broadband, there's also from Fort Erie a motion on COVID-19 personal facial masks. And as this meeting has been progressing this evening, there is a report from the St. Catharines on Dr. Hergy, the medical officer of health, with a possible masking order to municipal councils. And Mr. Kirkopoulos, I'll direct this to you because I think there is going to be more information, more local information coming forward. I would ask that we take this motion forward and see what you can put together as this evolves in the next week or so.
Through you, Madam Mayor, you're correct. Just this evening, the St. Catharines Standard did run a story that speaks to Dr. Hergy and possibly following suit with who I believe is kind of the Guelph Waterloo area. Their public office, their medical officer of health for public health there did make it mandated that masks be worn. And so I think the headline in the paper this evening is that Hergy pushes possible masking order to municipal councils. So something that we'll definitely report back on. And I can share that with all members of council as well.
Okay, that's very good. This question, of course, was asked by Councillor Njima about at least 4 weeks ago, maybe longer. So we're making progress, Councillor. All right, let's move to the information package of May 29. Is there anyone that has any questions or wants to bring any attention to anything in this package? There being nothing, then let's move to June 5th. Any questions or any items of note? All right, I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor Pachariva. Receive and file the following council information packages. Council information package, May 22nd, 2020, May 29th, 2020, and June 5th, 2020. Madam Clerk, if you would call the vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Brunet,
Yay.
Councillor Macpherson,
Yay.
Councillor Miklick, Councillor Miklick. You're on mute. Councillor Miklick, you're still on mute.
Yay.
Thank you. Councillor Pachariva.
Yay.
Councillor Reimer.
Yay.
Councillor Rajima.
Yay.
Councillor Timmers.
Yay.
And Councillor Russell marked absent. Madam Mayor.
Yay.
And that carries. Thank you.
All right, now item 12.1 is the mayor's report and also followed by the regional councillor report. I do have a report this evening. I'm sure that our minds had many things that we've been turning our minds to the last while, but it was my plan, the way things were rolling out, to speak to the activities that the town is engaged in to ensure that we remain open for business. And certainly the report that we had tonight on the COVID-19 impact update was very beneficial. So for anyone who's watching, you'll want to take a look at that. It's report AD-04-20. And for, you know, for the most part, a lot of effort is going into the economic development activities because that is what is impacting people directly. And so there's always a big push to remove red tape of applications. And I think the CAO was quite clear about the fact that we're going to have to make an investment in this in the future in order for things to integrate with one report to integrate with another to make this really effective. So you can go on the town's website, lincoln.ca, and find all the initiatives that the town is engaging in. You can also go to the niagararegion.ca/health site, and you'll find the most up-to-date COVID-19 information from the medical officer of health, Dr. Hergy. And most notable, of course, is in light of today's announcement by Premier Ford regarding the stage 2 recovery, is a letter from Dr. Hergy that went to the Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. David Williams, regarding Niagara's level of preparedness in entering stage 2. And I bring this up because often, you know, in looking at numbers, you may not entirely understand, ladies and gentlemen, what it means in terms of the overall picture. And there's really 5 points that he was making clear. One is that Niagara's local disease transmission is low. Niagara is performing excellent case management and is ready if something changes as we move into stage 2, if something changes. Important is that Niagara's hospitals are well positioned to manage a surge of new cases. Niagara has widespread testing in place in the context of low prevalence. And so that's always an interpretation that goes on there, but those are the facts. And he also noted that because we've waited and been very patient and isolated and done everything that we should have been doing, that people in many cases, and certainly children, may be suffering from more harm and a lack of exposure to some of the important social determinants of health than we would have if we'd been out and about doing our normal business and meeting with our friends. And it certainly does get people down when you're in isolation week after week. But the most important point of all is that because of your efforts, everybody in the community's efforts in Lincoln and in Niagara, we are in an excellent position to open up and get business moving again. And of course, our staff have been working hard in all departments to make this happen. So please take the time to internalize the importance of everything that you've done to stay home so that other people can go to work and keep down the level of congestion out in the community. Everything you have done has really been to keep this community in Niagara safe. At the town of Lincoln and every municipality, I'm sure in Niagara, we will continue to help you with the challenges of opening up and where and if necessary to have those conversations about payment plans. We talked about these earlier that are specific to your needs. You will find a friendly voice at the town hall. We understand these are not easy conversations to have, but they're going to be important ones. We know the next months will be challenging, and because everyone is expected, including municipalities, to manage their resources, we are all in this together. It also means the town will look for every fair and equitable way possible to mitigate costs where there is discretion and where there isn't a mandatory responsibility or a human responsibility. As the weekend progressed, however, I realized that this formula that we've been following for moving ahead, or even if you look at it as the best laid plans to keep you informed, our most sterling efforts to ensure that you have access to whatever it is you need right now to survive and thrive. All of these efforts take significant talent and resources. And they were, in the grand scheme of survival, over the weekend, in my mind, becoming small and insignificant to the most urgent problem of our complacency around social equality that we're starting to see around us all over the world. And this blaming of other races and criticism of public institutions and even renewing threats to personal freedoms and beliefs. And I was not feeling very comfortable. I didn't like this, to know that this was happening in our community or even around us. Not only are individuals and whole groups sometimes being treated with disdain, but they're being devalued by others. The work of government becomes worthless over the work of private enterprise. The education and work of skilled trades is devalued to the contribution of a university education. And the work of the lowest paid in our society is devalued because they can't get a better job. And of course, didn't it just turn out that they became the most essential to all of our survival? They needed to work while the rest of society could remain safely at home. They needed to work in order to keep things going, to keep that machine going. We've seen that during COVID with truck drivers and grocery clerks. We've seen it with everyone who works at the lowest wages. They became those who were very important. And I say this above and beyond first responders, who are essentially professional people. It sounds familiar because it is. This is what happened after the Great War, where things changed so much and everybody was out working while all the men were soldiering on. But as soon as war was over, society then expected to go back to the way things were before. And to a great extent, it did. So when we fast forward to where we are today, we have new targets. Now we've got new people that we can make disparaging comments about. The offshore workers that come here to do manual work on our farms, so important to productivity. Now, I think there may be more people that are seeing farm work as having more value, but in the meantime, it is true that we need offshore workers, and they are very valuable and they are skilled. So what is the matter with our society? This idea of, taking people on all the time to make us feel good. What is the purpose of this? And it's having an impact on the good and the bad of what is happening in our society locally, right here in Lincoln and all over Niagara. But on the other hand, this weekend, we saw also locally a very peaceful expression of that as a small Black Lives Matter gathering by students. Intersected a Niagara-wide parade of cars raising awareness on the federal migrant workers program. So there are problems out there, and we need to find ways of learning about them and trying to influence a different way. So I hope, ladies and gentlemen, that when the tides turn and all of this great effort that we put into improving the economy and trying to do better for each other, that we won't be back in the business of racism and bias and ignoring the effects of COVID-19. Many of those social issues existed before, but it was just a little easier to ignore them. I quite understand that. Why then do we put so much effort into trying to ensure that everybody's going to be okay? Because that's what we're doing right now. Are you okay? Are you going to be okay? If we do this, will you do better? Why do we bother with the vision of grow, prosper, belong when we really intend to sustain deep social inequality in our society? We know this when we hear language that marginalizes those that we don't agree with. And you've heard this before. Instead of going hard on the issue of social and economic equality, which I'm sure that all of us agree exists and is real, we turn to the individual and we continue to hammer on them and scapegoat them and their behaviors, which are clearly seen as a threat to our beliefs. The inequalities in our society cannot continue to be ignored, and this is the time to have this conversation. We have no justification except personal bias for treating the LGBTQ like they have no value, as if there is something mentally or physically wrong with them. There is no justification for bias against people of color. And yes, I do support the movement of Black Lives Matter, but I also support the movement of Every Life Matters. There is no justification for religious bias, and yet it still goes on. What are our plans for a change in decision-making across sectors and communities to ensure the isolated and vulnerable are safe, well-fed, and connected? That's really it. This is what matters to the security of our communities in the future. Everything else will flow beautifully when those things are in place. Government is charged with the responsibility of forming policy that treats everyone fairly and equitably, and this is never more important than now at the local level, where the greatest daily impact is felt. And while government is not perfect, it has a responsibility to assist, to help, and support. And while the threat of change is always there, the threat of not changing in the face of this pandemic is so profound that to do nothing and to expect to continue as we have in the past will produce greater economic consequences unless we fundamentally restructure and redistribute power and opportunity. Why? Because if left alone, if not checked, it will make regrowth and recovery impossible to achieve due to a lack of basic livelihoods and social cohesion, a sense of community. Something to consider here is how, by starting to ramp up the language of bias, which is what we were hearing on the weekend, and scapegoating others, that those agendas will cause such distraction that it may be impossible to affect the important social change that is essential to communities of the future. And I think that is something that we have to seriously think about. I ask you to reconsider your personal and business goals as we move into stage 2 and begin to open our economies so that our communities can grow. And ask the question, who is missing from my plan for the future of Lincoln. Stop and take into account the hurtful behaviors and dangerous mantra that we have been exposed to. Consider how the loss of rights and freedoms impacts all of us when we strive to remove those rights from others. Remember that you live in Lincoln, where even in our imperfect state, we strive to be good neighbors, where even in the state of parents not being able to meet their physical and emotional needs, that children, through a condition of community caring, can be encouraged to achieve their very best. We, as your government leaders and the professional staff that manage our town of Lincoln, will be available to all of you to help everyone recover, to do everything we can to ensure you have access to the resources out there to help you, all of you. Many of those benefits come from higher order government, and we will help coordinate them for you as individuals and families. Together, we will continue to reach our loftier goals of being a community that is welcoming, connected, resilient, and vibrant. Please take away the most important part of this message, and that is individuals like you matter to this community of Lincoln. We, as your government representatives, expect to manage a significant change to ensure that everyone is safe and secure now and in the future. We anticipate there will be significant rethinking and reimagining to achieve that change in our society so that there is more social and economic equity. You should expect that you will also be part of the recovery process, and that process will be inclusive to everyone who calls Lincoln home. And we will role model those values to ensure that we are held accountable to you and our collective future. At the end of the day, it comes down to one word: respect. We have to respect one another, and not just during tough times, but always. As the Golden Rule states, treat others as you would like others to treat you. As we have worked hard together to combat COVID-19, it is even more important to keep that bond to continue working together after COVID-19, working hand in hand to make our community a place where everyone is welcomed and treated with respect. Thank you for joining us this evening, inviting us into your home. Please share your views, and when you do, remember to go hard on the issues and not the people involved. Together, we will rebuild our economy and ensure we strive to build up every person in Lincoln to achieve all of your and our community goals. It is our pleasure to serve you. Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Michalek and seconded by Councillor Reimer to receive and file as information the Mayor's report on June 15th, 2020. Madam Clerk, would you call the vote?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. A reminder to take your mics off of mute. Councillor Brunet.
Yay.
Councillor Macpherson.
Yay.
Councillor Michalek.
Yay.
Councillor Pachariva.
Yay.
Councillor Reimer.
Yay.
Councillor Rajima. Councillor Rajima.
Yay.
Councillor Russell marked absent. Councillor Timmers.
Yay.
Madam Mayor.
Yay.
That carries. Thank you.
Councillor, we move on to item 12.2, Regional Council Update, which was circulated in advance. And Councillor Foster advised us later this afternoon he would not be attending. However, there are quite a number of items on, this is committee week at the region. There's quite a bit going on, and I think he will have quite a fulsome report for you. Are there any questions that we could direct to him so that he could correspond with you privately? Or yes, it would have to be privately, or to wait for the his next report. All right, if there is, if that can be accommodated. In the meantime, I'll ask the clerk to call to call the vote on the following motion by Councillor Timmers and Councillor Renchima to receive and file as information Regional Councillor Foster's update on June 15th, 2020. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Councillor Brunei,
Yay.
Councillor Macpherson,
Yay.
Councillor Miklick,
Yay.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yay.
Councillor Reimer,
Yay.
Councillor Rajima,
Yay.
Councillor Russell marked absent, Councillor Timmers,
Yay.
Madam Mayor.
Yes. Yay.
Thank you. That carries.
All right, the next item is item 14.1 or item 13, notice of motion. And we have a notice of motion brought forward by Councillor Pachariva with respect to a Town of Lincoln resolution regarding uniting against racism and discrimination. In order for this item to be considered immediately upon its introduction, we require a 2/3 vote. Madam Clerk?
Thank you.
Would you manage this notice of motion?
Thank you. I will. So in order for this to be even considered, we'll call the vote. So Councillor Brunei,
Yay.
Councillor Macpherson,
Yay.
Councillor Miklick,
Yay.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yay.
Councillor Reimer,
Yay.
Councillor Rajima,
Yay.
Councillor Russell marked absent, Councillor Timmers,
Yay.
Madam Mayor,
Yay.
and that's carried. So Madam
right,
Mayor, would you mind if Councillor Pachariva speaks and reads the motion out?
Yes, so I'm looking, oh, I see. Deputy Mayor Pachariva, go
Yes.
ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. And you know what, you touched upon a lot of the things that are in the motion tonight in your very poignant mayor's address tonight. Given the protests that are occurring around the world, I wanted to bring this forward this evening for council's consideration. I really appreciate everyone passing the waiving the 2/3 to put this on the table. You know, we're elected as leaders. The mayor in her remarks tonight, we need to try to influence a different way, and we have an opportunity. And so I'm going to read the motion I have here. Now, of course, my phone. Oh, here we go. Okay. So, whereas the recent death of George Floyd has resulted in significant and much needed attention on the racial injustices across not only Canada and the United States of America, but across numerous countries. Whereas this is provoking an important discussion that must not be overshadowed by violence. We are taking this opportunity to condemn racism. If we are to find a place of peace and equity or equality, there is no room for such hatred, not even in a subtle way. Therefore, we are calling upon the town of Lincoln to unite in understanding. We consider ourselves a kind and welcoming town, but we are not immune to racism and discrimination. We must take time to listen to and understand the experiences of those who have been impacted by racism. And whereas to our racialized community, we grieve with you, we sympathize with you, and we stand with you. We recognize that we may not fully comprehend the turmoil you feel, but we align with you in your fight against systematic racism and oppression. Whereas as people in positions of authority, we recognize that it is more important than ever to use our platforms to elevate those without the same privileges and to call out racism as it happens. Perhaps, more importantly, we must step away from our privilege and listen, exercise silence to make space for the voices of Black people and people of color. Therefore, be it resolved, this is a practice that the town of Lincoln community aim to continue every day, listening earnestly to the stories of people who have experienced unimaginable hatred. It is only when we step back and listen that we can learn and grow capacity for love and compassion. Please join us in helping to create an environment upon which we can all exist in peace as equals.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pachariva. It was most interesting. We had no time to be consulting with each other today that you would have also come up with this complementary motion. Are there any questions to the motion from council? All right, I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva, and we require a seconder. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Timmers. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
The motion has been read. We have a mover and seconder. Would you conduct the vote?
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. So I'll begin with Councillor Brunet,
Yay.
Councillor Macpherson,
Yay.
Councillor Miklick,
Yay.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yay.
Councillor Reimer,
Yay.
Councillor Rajima,
Yay.
Councillor Russell marked absent, Councillor Timmers,
Yay.
Madam Mayor,
Yay.
and that carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillors. We'll move on now to confidential items. And item 14.1 requires that we move into closed session. However, I would like to explain what will be happening for those watching this electronic meeting. First, there will be a closed session statement that the clerk will review for all of council and staff that will be attending the closed session. And once that's completed, we will move on with the motion to move into closed. By doing this, each council member, including the mayor, is endorsing the fact that they understand the terms and conditions that relate to going into closed session. The clerk will be turning off the live webcast during the closed portion of the meeting. And once we've completed the closed portion of the meeting, we will resume with the live webcast and carry on with the public portion of the meeting, and we'll read any motions in the public session. So I'm going to ask the clerk now to conduct the closed session statement for all of council and others attending the closed session. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Before we begin the closed session, all members are reminded that any discussions in closed are to remain confidential as per our procedural bylaw and our code of conduct for the council of the town of Lincoln. Before we begin, I need each member that is attending electronically to confirm the following: that you understand that matters are to remain confidential, and confirm no one else is present with you, and confirm no one else can hear this closed session, and confirm that you are not using any electronic devices other than your tablet or computer for the video conferencing, and confirm that you are not recording this portion of the meeting. If you acknowledge all of the above, please reply with "I understand," confirm to all of the statements as I read your name aloud. For those not attending, you will be put in a waiting room where everything is muted. Once we come back out of closed, you will be brought back into the live meeting. Mayor Easton.
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Councillor Rajima.
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Councillor Brunet.
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Councillor Pachariva.
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Councillor Macpherson.
Understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Councillor Miklick.
I understand and confirm to all of your statements.
Councillor Timmers.
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Councillor Reimer.
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
CAO Mike Kirkopoulos.
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
And our Finance Treasurer, Terry Trewalla. You're on mute.
Sorry, I understand and confirm to all the statements.
Thank you. And for the rest of those from staff, not attending, like I said, you will be put into a waiting room and then be brought back in at a later time when we're live.
Madam Clerk, could we take a 5-minute break at this point while you look after the technical elements?
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, 5 minutes. It's 8:44. We'll come back at 9 o'clock or 8:44, 8:49.